the thing I actually wanted to talk about today was off the back of a tweet that I sent to you. Agnes Callard. Agnes said, introvert is an identity category. Introverts see being an introvert as an important part of their character, who they are, a bond they have with other introverts, something others should know about them, etc. This seems to me to be far less true for extroverts. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Ooh, that is interesting.
You don't see anyone self-identifying as an extrovert, but you see plenty
No.
of people self-identifying as introverts. So I mean, I think it's interesting for the obvious reason of like, oh, well, what's going on there? But I think below the surface is this phenomenon that you can get an idea for the invisible forces that people are feeling in their lives by the things that they feel the need to signal. Because they will feel the need to signal. I keep saying they. I should say we. I'm not trying to like speak from up high or down on the people or anything like that. But there are lots of invisible forces that we feel, and a lot of the things that we try and signal are sort of going against those forces. And so I think the in the case of introverts being more vocal about their introversion rather compared to extroverts. I think what's really going on is there is this invisible force in society that kind of tells you that it's better to be extroverted, that like that's kind of the right way to do things. That there's like an invisible narrative around that. And so if you're an extrovert, I mean, I don't really like the two categories to be honest, but whatever, let's go with it. If you're an extrovert, it's all fine and dandy. Like you don't spend any time at all having to think about this because it's like, whatever, yeah, I'm okay. Whereas if you are an introvert, whatever that means, then, you sort of feel this invisible narrative and you want to somehow like push back against it. And it's very cathartic to be able to band together with other people who also identify as introverts and sort of come together in that way to sort of,
It's like that book, Quiet. I think the subtitle is "The Power of Introverts in a World of Extroverts" or something, which did really well. I think partly because it was a feel good for people who were introverts. Like, oh yeah, introverts are legit as well.
yeah, I think just the subheading of that book and like the reason they chose that is exactly this thing, because if you're someone who's an introvert, you will identify with that because it's like, oh yeah, there's this narrative of like extroversion is the right way to go, or whatever, and we're finally being validated.
It sort of feels like how no one identifies as a white male, and yet lots of people identify as a woman of color, and there are support groups around that kind of thing, and people will band together on that particular identity. Whereas no one's banding together on the identity of being a white male, like it's just not a thing. Equally, no one is banding together. Like I feel like most extroverts don't even know the word extrovert is a thing because they're not the sorts of people that would read articles, talking about the difference between introverts and extroverts. So when something is so normalized, there is that element of when you are not part of that normal group, like Pakistan society at university.
Yeah.
I guarantee there's no like Englishman society at university. Like it's just not a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I think what you're saying is obviously true. I think in a lot of instances, it's not just for example, the introversion extroversion thing. I think what you're kind of implying is, if in the world like 80% of people were extroverts and 20% were introverts,
Yeah.
then there'd be no reason for the extroverts to like shout it from the rooftops. But the introverts are like a smaller group, and so they need to kind of band together. I think there are many instances where it is closer to 50-50 or even more people against the thing, but the narrative is so strong in the other direction that the narrative is actually going against the majority or going against like the 50%. And so I think one of these, or an example that comes to mind at university is like clubbing, like if you show up at a university in the UK and you go through like the first term or something, you are going to think that 95% of the human population loves like dancing in a sweaty little underground room. You're going to think, man, I'm so weird that I didn't really enjoy it that much. And I think, and from surveying my friends, I'd say maybe like 10 to 20% of people like are intrinsically actually into the activity, but the narrative that you should be into the activity is so strong that actually the 80% of people who aren't that into it would still do it. And then after the first few weeks, after the first term, a couple of terms or whatever, then you do start to see some people, kind of speak out against it and have these
Yeah.
cathartic conversations of like,
Like, by
you
the
know
way,
what,
guys,
actually,
I
yeah,
don't know if anyone's realized, but like, it's actually not that fun. Be like, oh my god, I
yeah,
thought I was the only one who felt that way.
yeah, yeah. So I think the clubbing phenomenon at university is particularly interesting because I think the numbers are just so skewed, where the narrative is pushing back against like 80% of the people.
Mm.
I think in most situations it might be like 50% or something. Like on the introversion extroversion thing, what are your thoughts on that in general? Like, do you subscribe to either of those categories? Are you an introvert?
I don't know. I always think like the definition of an introvert allegedly is someone who gets sort of recharges their energy based on being alone versus being with others. Like when I was at university, I always wanted to have people in my room. Um, and I think if I was at university again, I would still prefer that particular setup where my door is always open and people can always rock up if they want. But even so, it's like if I'm for example, on holiday with friends, I would quite like there to be like, an evening or an afternoon or something where once in a while we're just kind of sitting in the living room on our laptops doing our own thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's like a introvert extrovert thing. I don't feel I need my energy to recharge. I just always have cool things to do on the computer,
Right. Yeah.
which benefit from kind of checking in once in a while. So I don't know. What about you?
I think I've definitely been made to feel like I was an introvert when I was younger, I think, just because I was kind of nerdy and my interests again were kind of nerdy. But I think fundamentally, I'm all about the human connection, man. You know me. So I think I'm definitely, yeah. I mean, if I had to pick a side, I think I'd definitely say I'm extroverted. But I think I was made to feel introverted just because I felt like my interests
Not
were
because you were
a
interested
bit
in
niche.
reptiles and
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what a lot of it is. I think partly that's why I don't really like the categories because I think I mean, there are definitely some people who, you know, like a lot of alone time, don't particularly like hanging out with other people. I think I think most people like hanging out with small groups of people
mm,
or like one on one with friends. I also think most people don't particularly like large social events with a bunch of strangers they don't know where they have to meet people. And I think again, there's a strong narrative that like that set, there's a strong narrative that one should be comfortable in the kind of setting where it's a large group of people you don't know and you have to meet people.
yeah.
When I'd say, maybe 10% of people are actually comfortable in that setting. I think 90% are not. But those 90% would be made to feel like, oh, maybe I'm introverted or something. Because
You've
whenever
done
I've
to
dug
the
into
house
this,
parties. Yeah.
yeah, whenever I've dug into this like introversion, extroversion thing with people, I think most people end up saying like, "Oh yeah, I don't like hanging out in sort of large groups of people," and like 90% of people agree with it. Like, but that is the vast majority of people do not like hanging out in large groups of people, especially people that they don't know. But they are made to feel like that is non-standard, and so I
Mm.
think lots of people. I think identify as introverts on the grounds that they're not comfortable in large groups of strangers, and that they prefer hanging out with like small groups of closer friends. And
Yeah.
like that's like 90% of people,
Yeah.
surely. So yeah, I think this is an instance where like the narratives go really far against the vast majority, and then there's a question of like, okay, if like the majority of people are getting screwed by this narrative, why are we all still perpetuating it? And I think the thing is that like there's like a perceived social cost. Like, you know, in order to come out against this narrative, you basically have to put your hand up and risk saying like I'm weird,
Yeah.
when actually 90% of people is the same weird as you in that case.